Hey there. Thanks for joining me. This is Life After Dawn, the Dad Mom. Me, Dawn Anna, talking to you from Burlington, Vermont. It's after 1 a.m., so that's why I'm whispering, because I'm in the house of my best friend and the best man in our wedding 20 years ago. He is a professor of a college here in Burlington, Vermont, and he's graciously offered us a place to sleep instead of a hotel, because we're looking at colleges for my 17-year-old son. We're traveling all throughout New England, and starting tomorrow, we're going to head our way to Michigan and Chicago and lots of other states. Work our way back to Connecticut eventually, probably by a week from today. So, I have received a question that tops all others. As a matter of fact, I scrapped what I originally was doing when I received this question late on Wednesday night. And I think that this rings a bell for both me and a lot of other women. And I hope you'll indulge me while I read MC's letter to me. She writes, I have been following you since the first press about your transition. That was back in 2013. You seem so kind and open. I feel I can reach out to you. I have so many questions. Well, thank you, MC. She writes, first, my condolences on the death of your dear Wendy. What a beautiful family you two created, and what a wonderful example you have set by shepherding your children through this challenging time. Thank you. As a person born with a double X chromosomes and into a male-dominated family in the 1950s, now what she means is that she is a woman who was assigned female at birth and was raised a woman, but in a family that was dominated by men. She says she saw how much easier life is for males. I have always been intrigued with the idea of changing gender, she writes. However, as our culture has become more apathetic about our differences, at least in New York City, she says she's increasingly curious about XY-born men identifying as women. That would be one way to describe me. I describe myself not as a man who identifies as a woman, but as someone who was assigned male at birth, who identifies as my authentic gender, which is female. She writes, I do not begrudge you your style or your identification. Well, thank you. What I want to know, she asks, as a woman, are trans women going to become allies on women's health care, including mammograms, pap smears, bone density tests, the BRCA test, other tests, and equal access to the legal system for domestic violence, sexual assault? Throughout the world, she writes, women are marginalized, repressed, raped, veiled, and stoned to death. Are trans issues different from women's issues, she asked me. I can safely say that most women don't care if a trans person is in her public toilet. What she doesn't want is a pervert of any persuasion. Well, we can agree on that for sure. Women struggle with decades of PMS, paying sales tax for tampons, trying to get pregnant, trying not to get pregnant, and the rigors of menopause. You have helped me, she writes, to see that transgender people pay their own steep trans price. But it is different from the price exacted from the gender as a whole. Well, I completely agree with that. And she writes that, again, being blessed as a New Yorker, and absolutely it is a blessing to be a New York native as I am, she writes that she can switch between traits and fashion considered masculine and feminine, whatever I want or the situation warrants. My children know me as mom and their father as dad, but the traits ascribed to each role are our own invention. In her last paragraph, she writes, I do not presume to understand your struggles. As a man, as a woman, as a dad, as a mom, as a trans person. The trans community has made enormous cultural and legal strides in a relatively short amount of time. Well, we're still making those strides. We've at least reached awareness, so let's put it that way. Women won one court victory in Texas that never should have even been an issue, and we are supposed to be grateful. I would like to know, and this is the ultimate question here, what you see as trans women's role in working on all women's issues. Well, MC, thank you. This is a question that I have often spoken about both with my male friends, with my trans friends, my cisgendered, which means non-trans, friends of straight and lesbian. And most notably, I've also talked about it with my trans men friends. And I want to address that first because it's very important to understand that transgender doesn't just mean people who were assigned male at birth who now identify as female publicly. They may have identified as female privately, but now are out. Transgender, of course, includes the trans male population, or transmasculine, trans men. A transgender man is a man. It's someone who identifies as a man, as a male, and despite having a vagina, despite having developed breasts, doesn't see himself as what he was assigned at birth, a female. Those who are trans men do things like hide their breasts or pack. They wear something in their pants to simulate having a penis. Some men have surgery to remove their breasts. Some men have surgery to construct a phallus. It's up to each individual trans man how they want to proceed. No one requires them to have surgery to become a man. No one thinks that that surgery completes their transition. No one is saying that you can't be a man if you don't have a penis. What being a trans man means, though, is that you still have bodily functions and body, or say organs, that are typically only found in women who are assigned female at birth. And you can only imagine what it must be like for someone who's a trans man to have to go and get a pap smear, to have to get a mammogram, to have to go through the rigors of PMS and periods, and yes, menopause. It's a hard thing because their body basically betrays who they feel they are. Transitioning doesn't erase those things. Even having a hysterectomy, it may remove the female reproductive system, but it doesn't change the fact that there are some who will never ever see them as anything but some kind of freak, just like transgender women are seen as men dressing up as women. It still happens. And I'd like to say that being a New Yorker, even if I live in a New England state, I don't feel as if the world looks at me as some kind of freak. I think the world looks at me as just another woman, a woman of a different kind, which gets me to your next question. Do trans women support women's rights? Do trans men support women's rights? Women's issues? Women's injustice? Hell yeah. Abso-effing-lutely. What matters most to me is not women's issues or trans issues, but civil rights, human rights. What happens in our society is that we use the construct of gender, the construct of race, the ability for us to draw lines around each other and to paint differences and say, this person isn't worth what this person is, or that person doesn't get what the rest of us get. And who's on that other side? Well, I don't have to paint a very clear picture, do I? It's white, straight men. There are white gay men who profit from this as well. But society is built to basically elevate the man over the women, the whites over all the other races. And the tide is turning. Did I identify as a white, straight man? Oh yeah, I did. I knew something was different about me. I knew something was going to have to be repressed. Something will have to be hidden. Two things had to be hidden for a very long time. But enough jokes. We as a society need to work on getting our medical system, our justice system, and our cultural system to understand, appreciate, and respect differences. Women, whether they be trans or assigned female at birth, are going to require protections, support, and the ability to fight injustice. That doesn't mean special rights. It means that the system is geared to benefit people who were not in possession of a vagina. As a dad mom, I can tell you that one of the things I feel is most important to me is to educate my sons, not just to respect women, but to respect people and to think of women as equals and as needing the right amount of help, assistance, guidance that they don't get from our society. So that's why my daughter is told she can do anything she wants. Not just what our culture tells her she can or can't do, but anything she dreams of. But she also needs to understand that there are men who are willing to take that away from her. There are men who are willing to pressure her or prey upon her. And that the boys need to understand that it's not the girl's job to take care of reproductive rights. Reproductive rights are not just the girl's job. As a parent, as a dad mom, I'm very proud of my children, having been, through both my wife and I, educated, interested in, and now advocating for women's rights, LGBT rights, for equality. My little guy is 9 years old, and he can't understand why a woman can't earn what a man can earn. He can't understand why a woman can't get the same kind of treatment in court, or that there are men who are telling other women what they can or can't have. What happened in Texas? It's setting things right again. I'm glad to see the Supreme Court putting things right. I don't want to get into abortion rights and the right to live and the right to die and all that stuff right here. This is not the time. This is already too long. So let's just focus on this. Before we can get into those issues of who gets to decide what, let's decide first to protect all Americans, all people, men, women, trans men, trans women, gender nonconforming Americans, people who deserve and are entitled to civil rights. Let's get that settled first. Let's agree that in our society right now, there's inequality. After we have the equality issue settled once and for all, I think that will be a great time for us to decide what we should do as a country. And my opinion would be that we let individuals decide what is right for them up until the point where the law has to intervene. That's enough for this week. I hope that you're well. I look forward to talking to you again next Wednesday. And please do write me right here, dawnennis@gmail.com. And I'll have another story for you next week about my trip, the dad, mom, and her son on the road. You take care.